So it reminds me of the Buddha's simile for the wholesome mind, or the mind with a wholesome mental state. Just like the moon coming out from behind the clouds, illuminating the night sky. When we bring up a wholesome mental state, such as faith or mindfulness or insight, and immediately it illuminates our mind. When we lose our mindfulness, it's as if the mind becomes darker. Comes under the influence of greed, anger, or delusion. Less peaceful, more agitated. But when we put effort into the practice, becoming mindful of the breath, clearly comprehending the in-breath and the out-breath, then the mind brightens, and with that becomes more stable, still, calm. Already that is an improvement. And if we continue to practice directing our mind to pay attention to the in-breath and the out-breath, then mindfulness becomes more continuous, and we feel at ease in our body and our mind. And then it's possible to see the arising, passing away of thoughts and feelings. It's possible to see with more clarity the truth of the way things are, rather than endlessly following distraction or worrying or experiencing aversion. The mind becomes stiller, quieter, and just knowing experience, knowing a thought arising, passing away, or focusing on feelings, even painful feelings, can just be known for what they are. Feeling, coming into experience, passing away. So if your mind is getting distracted, just walk outside, have a look at the moon. Gives you a clue to what you're aiming for. Just look at the brightness of the moon, the stillness of the night air. So we can carry on practicing until you hear the sound of the bell. We'll continue with evening chanting, which you'll find on page 17 of the chanting book. Yo so Buddha Sawakato Yina Bhagavata Dhammo Supatipano Yasa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Dhammayam Bhagavantang Sadhammang Sasankhang Imehi Sakare Hiyatarahang Aropitehi Apipujayama Sadhu no bante bhagava suchira parinibbodhopi Vajima janatanukamba manasa Ime sakare dugata pannagara bhute patikanato Amhakang nigaratang hitaya sukhaya Arahang samma sambuddho bhagava Buddhang bhagavantang abhivademi Swakato bhagavata dhammo dhammang namasami Supatipano bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho saṅghang namami Handamayam buddhasa bhagavato bhaganamakarangaro masaya Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa อันตมยัมบุทธานุสตินายังการุมาเสยธรรมโกปานาภาคาวันตังอิวัมกาลยาโนกิติสาโดอาภุกาโตอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณะสัมปันโนสุขโตโลกาวิโดอนุตตรปุริสธรรมสารติสัทธาเทวมนุสสานังพุทโธภะคะวะติอันตมยัมบุทธาภิกิติงการุมาเสยบุตตวารหันตวรธาติกุณาปิยุตวะสุดาปิญญาณการุณาหิสัมมากตตวะโบเดสิโยสุจานาตังกามลังวาสุโรวันดามหังดามรณังศิรสาจิเนนดังบุตโตโยสัพพปานินางสารนังเขมามุตตมังปัตตมานุสติทานังวันดามิทังสิเรนะหังบุตตาสาสามิดาสวะบุตโตเมสามิกิสารวะบุตโตตุกาสกาตาจาวิตาตาจาหิตาสเมบุตตาสังนิยาเดมิสาริรังชีวิตังชิดังวันดันโตหังจาริสามิบุตตาเสวะสุโบธิทังนาติเมสารนังอัญญัมบุตโตเมสารนังวรังเอเทนะสัจจวาเจนะวาเดยัมสัตตุสาสเนบุตังเมวันดมาเนนะยัมปุญญัมบาสุตังอิตาสัพเพปิยันตรายาเมมาอิสุมนาสเดชะสาขายนวาจายวเชทัสวะพุทเอกุขมัมปะกะธรรมยมังพุทโธปฏิกานาตัวจยันตังกาลันตเรสังวริตุมวะพุทเทหันธรรมยังธรรมานุสตินายังการุมาเสยสวากาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมสันติติโกอาคาลิโกอิปัสสิโกโอปะนายิโกปัจจตังเวทิตาโบวินโยหิติอันธรรมยังธรรมาภิกิติงการุมาเสยสวากาตาดาดิโกนาโยกาวะเสนาสยโยโยมากาปากาปาริยาติวิโมกาเบโดนะโมกุโลกาปัตนาดาดาดาริดาริวันดามหังธรรมหารังวรธรรมเมตัง ธัมโมโยสัพพปานินังสารนังเขมมุตตมังดุติยานุสติทานังวันดามิทังสิเรนังธัมมัสสะสมิดาโสวะธัมโมเมสามิกิสารโรธัมโมดุกัสสะกาตาจาวิดาตาจาหิตาสเมธัมมัสสะหังนิยาเดมิสาริรังชีวิตังจิตังวันดันโตหังจาริสามิธัมมัสเสวะสุธัมมตังนาติเมสารนังอัญญังธัมโมเมสารนังวรังเอเทนะสัจจวาเจนะวะเดยัมสัตตุสาสเนธัมมังเมวันดมาเนนะยัมปุญญัมปัสสุตังอิตาสัพเพปิยันตรายาเมมาเอสุมดัสสะเดจัสสะขายนวจายวเจตาสวะธัมมิกุกมัมปะกะธัมมยยังธัมโมปฏิกานาตัวเจยันตังกาลันตเรสังวริตุมวะธัมมิหันธัมมยังสังขานุสตินายังการุมาเสยสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆโอโจปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆญาณปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสามีจิปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆยาติดังจัตตาริปุริสยุกานิอัตตาปุริสปุกาลาเอสาภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอาหุเนโยภาหุเนโยดากิเนโยอัญจลิการณิโยอนุตตรัมปุญญาเกตังโลกัสสาติอันธัมมยังสังฆาปิกิติงการุมาเสยสัตธัมมะโจสุปฏิปัติคุณาภิยุโตโยตาปิโตอาริยปุกขละสังฆาเสโตศิลาติธัมมภาวราสยกายจิโตวันดามหังธรรมริยานกานังสุสุดังสังโฆโยสัพพปานินังสารนังเขมมุตตมังตติยานุสติทานังวันดามิทังสิเรนังสังฆาสาสมิดาโสวะสังโฆเมสามิกิสารโรสังโฆดุกัสสะกาตาจาวิดาตาจาหิตาสเมสังฆาสาหังนิยาเดมิสาริรังชีวิตังจิตังวันดันโตหังจาริสามิสังฆาโสปฏิ natang nati me saranang anyang sangho me saranang warang etena sacha vajena vadayam satu sasane Sangang me vandamanena yam punyam vasudang ita sabbe piyantaraya me ma esumda sadejasa Kayena wajaya wajita sawa sangye kukumam bhakatamayayang sangho patikana tavachayantang kalantare sangvaritum wa sangye. Page 65, the reflection on the 32 parts of the body. Damayang dawating sakara patang banamase Ayam komi kayo udamba datala atoke samataka tachapariyanto puro nana pakara sasuchino. This which is my body, from the soles of the feet up and down from the crown of the head, is a sealed bag of skin filled with unattractive things. Ati masaming kaye, in this body there are kesa, hair of the head, loma, hair of the body, naka, nails, danta, teeth, tacho, skin, mangsang, flesh, naharu, sinews, ati, bones, ati minjang, bone marrow, wakang, kidneys, hadayang, heart, yakanang, liver, kilomakang, membranes, pihakang, spleen, papasang, lungs, antang, bowels, antagunang, entrails, udariyang, undigested food, karisang, excrement, pitang, bile, semang, phlegm, pubo, pus, lohitang, blood, sedo, sweat, medo, fat, aso, tears, wasa, grease, kalo, spittle, singanika, mucus, lasika, oil of the joints, mutang, urine, matalunganti, brain, ewa mayami kayo udamba tatala atoke samataka tachapariyanto puro nana pakara sa suchino. This then which is my body, from the soles of the feet up and down from the crown of the head, is a sealed bag of skin filled with unattractive things. Page 61. 5 subjects for frequent recollection. Handamayang abhinna bhajawe kanapatang banama se jara dhammo mi jarang anatito. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. Bayadi dhammo mi bayading anatito. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. Marana dhammo mi maranang anatito. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. Sabehi me piye imana pe inana bhavo vina bhavo. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. Kamma sakomi, kamma dayado, kamma yoni, kamma bando, kamma patisarano. Yang kamang garisami kalayanam wa papakang wa tasadaya do bhavisami. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. Ewang abehi apinang bacawe kitabang. Thus we should frequently recollect. Page 31, verses sharing and aspiration. Handamayang udisana titana katayo banama se imina punya kamena upachaya kunutara acharyo pakaracha mata pita janyataka suryo chandi maharaja gunawanta narapicha Brahma Maharaja Indraja Lokapalaja Devata Yamomita Manusaja Majata Verika Picha Sabe Sata Sukhi Honto Punyani Pakatani Me Sukancha Dividang Dento Kipang Bape Tavo Matang Imina punya kamena imina udesena cha kipang sulabe cewa dhanu padana cedanang ye santane hina dhamma yawa nibbana mamang na santu sabadayewa yata jato bawe bawe Uju citang sati panya saleko iriamina maralabantu noka sangkatunca wiriye sume Buddha di pawaro nato dhammo nato warutamo nato pacika puto cha sanggo nato taro mamang Te sotamanu bhavena maroka sanglabantu ma tassa punyanu bhavena maroka sanglabantu ma. So we still have some questions left from earlier today, which I have to answer. So I think we got up to question 13, now we're on to 14. Dear Luang Por, when we transfer merit to a departed relative, do we perform the dana in the departed relative's name, i.e. dana by the name of the late relative, or should we do the dana in our name and then transfer merit to the departed relative? The second question is, do we use the word transfer instead of dedicate merit to departed beings? As I heard that dedicate is a term used for people alive only, and term transfer is for those no longer alive. Thank you. Well, I'd recommend when you're making merit for someone who's passed away, you can offer some dana, for example, you make a donation or you offer food or robes. And you can always, if you're offering to monks, you can always tell the monk who it's for. As part of a funeral ceremony or just on an anniversary or an occasion, you come to the monastery and you offer the dana. You say, this is for so-and-so. But most importantly is, say, at some point, usually when you're receiving the blessing, the monks give the anumodana for the dana that's been offered. At that point, you focus your mind on the person you're dedicating the merit to. So you could say their name or visualize their face, whatever you can do to hold your attention on that person and really share the goodness of your heart at that moment with them. And one way of looking at it is you're inviting them, their consciousness, wherever it is, to rejoice in the good that is being done, which is the real meaning of anumodana. So just as if it is a living person, you were saying about these words, transfer or dedicate. If it's a living person, say you have someone in hospital, sick, and you want to dedicate merit to them, well, you might actually go and visit them or ring them up and say, today I went to the temple and I made offerings on your behalf, and you're telling them so that they can rejoice in the merit that has been made. They hear that news and they feel good that you're doing something good for them, and something has been done. They can rejoice in that. If you're not able to actually speak to them or visit them, well, we say you can dedicate to them. Again, as you hear the monks chant the anumodana, or at some point you just quietly send your thoughts, focus on the person who's sick in hospital. So whether you use the word dedicate or transfer, these are just words. More importantly is to have the goodness of your heart, and there has to be a good action done. So dana is such a powerful good action to transfer or dedicate to someone, because you're clearly sacrificing some money or making food, or you have robes and you're offering them, or any act of charity. It's a very clear action, and that's something that's good, and you can dedicate that to somebody. You can also meditate. You can also chant on behalf of somebody, both the living and the dead. Probably one of the biggest obstacles in sharing or dedicating merit is that you may not be very focused when you do it. People's minds jump all over the place. And you see this, say, in the monastery, people come to make merit for somebody, and whether it's at the point they're offering or the receiving of the blessing from the monks, their mind is wandering around, maybe they're even talking, just not very focused or concentrated on what they're doing. And that's one reason why this tradition of pouring water to transfer merit to the dead came about, is to get people to focus on what they're doing. If you don't focus on pouring the water, if you're not mindful at that point, what happens is you spill your water, you pour it on your knee instead of into the receptacle. And that happens. People make a mess sometimes. And it's because, they're not very mindful at that moment. So transferring merit or dedicating merit, it's another form of meditation. It's no different. You're focusing your mind on a certain person and sharing the merit of this occasion. And some merit has to be made, whether it's the merit of meditation, chanting, making an offering. So the teachers with the skill in meditation who know whether people receive merit or not, one of the things they say is that sometimes you dedicate merit to a dead person and they don't immediately open up to this merit. Maybe they died with a very unwholesome state of mind, very afraid or angry or confused or full of attachment of one kind or another, full of resentment perhaps. And these are very common experiences as people are passing away. They don't always have a wholesome state of mind. So where they're reborn in the next destination, they carry these moods and attachments with them. And then people, the living, the family, the friends, make merit for them. But the merit doesn't immediately open up their mind to a more wholesome, happy state, which is what you're aiming to do. Your aim is to make merit, and as they rejoice in the merit that's being made, then maybe their mind improves and maybe even can attain a better or higher rebirth. But that may not happen immediately. You may have to make merit many times, on many occasions. So it's like you're breaking down the walls of attachment, the negative state of mind, the confusion, the suffering that they're experiencing. You're kind of breaking it down through repeated actions of dedicating merit. So a few monks I know have had relatives who passed away, maybe their parents, and they make merit maybe once a year. They have a big merit-making ceremony for their father or mother, because they say, well, they're still in a state of woe, a state of unhappiness, and the merit hasn't yet been recognized by the person who they're dedicating to. They're still too attached to their negative state of mind, so they keep doing it over and over again. And then one day they say, oh, the merit has reached them. They've been reborn in a better place. And that can take 1 year, or it can take 10 years or 20 years, who knows? It depends on the karma of the person. And of course, for us, the living, the best thing is make your merit now, so you don't have to worry about or be concerned about other people making merit for you after you die. So you keep the precepts, practice generosity, forgiveness, letting go, develop your mind in meditation, mindfulness, insight, so that at the end of your life you can die peacefully with a good state of mind, and then you're not too bothered whether people make merit for you or not. Another question. Good morning, Ajahn. Ajahn, during my meditation, I could hear my little voice telling myself what to do. Sometimes words of the teacher's meditation instructions will start to refresh in my mind. Should I be following them, or should I ignore them and return back to my breathing? They would like to get advice on how to go deeper into meditation. Well, if you hear words of the teacher's meditation instruction, if it's helpful and to the point, well, that can be a good reminder of what to do. This is what we call sanya, aramana, something that's gone into your mind in the past, you remember it, and it resurfaces during meditation. Sometimes when you're peaceful or mindful, you'll hear or remind yourself of teachings, and that can be quite useful. Could be a simple direction to go back to the breath, or to let go of something you're clinging to, or to see through a particular thought or attachment and see it as impermanent, as not self. So sometimes we use wise reflection even in the midst of meditation when we may be quite mindful and fairly peaceful. We can still have wise reflection come up, and sometimes it seems to be coming from elsewhere, where in fact it'll just be our own memory. But you also have to see what's appropriate, and sometimes the most appropriate thing is just stick with the breath and don't follow any thoughts at all. Just let them all go, and that is appropriate, particularly if your mindfulness and your samadhi is getting quite refined. Then you might not want anything, you might not want to cling on to anything or grasp at anything in your mind other than just the knowing of the breath, and as the breath is getting more and more refined, then even it may get to the point where you can't sense the movement of the in and out of the breath anymore. And so you just focus on that point where the movement of the breath seems to disappear. And body becomes totally still. Maybe you can't feel your body anymore. All that's left is the mind, and quite often you'll have bright, radiant, luminous mind arise because there's nothing else impinging on you. But keep awareness at that point where the breath has disappeared. So you're just with the mind itself, just the quality of knowing, and try and maintain that quality of knowing as long as you can. So then if different thoughts come up, you can let them go straight away. You don't want to stay with those thoughts, or maybe that's not the time to investigate thoughts, memories, feelings. You're simply improving the continuity of mindfulness on an object. And maybe at that stage, it's just the mind itself. Another question. Dear Ajahn, the meditation practices have helped to purify my mind and helped me a lot in many ways. In my life, burdened with duty and making a living, I still feel unhappy deep inside. If I have been putting in effort to restrain myself and to practice, why do I still feel unhappy and tired? Is freedom really possible? Freedom is always possible. One thing to be aware of is that as we get older, our body gives us more and more feelings of tiredness, aches and pains, tiredness. And this is physical, the physical degeneration and aging of the body. So then when the body is tired, it's very easy that that can promote an unwholesome state of mind, a reaction of aversion. Could be very subtle aversion to it. Nobody likes feeling tired. We all want to feel bouncy and full of energy, but we don't always. So you need a lot of patience, and you need enough mindfulness and insight at that moment to say, this feeling, if you're feeling tired, is not self. It's just a feeling, and you know where it's coming from. The causes and conditions are the aging of the body, or if you've been doing a lot of work, especially at the end of the day, your faculties are tired, your eyes are tired, your ears are tired, your body's tired, the brain even is tired from processing all the data of sense contact through the day. So it's part of life. We don't feel bouncy and full of energy all the time. When you do feel energetic, that's your merit, that's good. Enjoy it. And then learn to be patient and mindful when you're not feeling energetic. Don't let it be a cause for irritation, grumpiness. A lot of people lose their temper when they get tired. When they're too stressed, too tired, then they can't concentrate, they can't maintain their awareness very well. So be aware of that, be ready for that, and learn how to practice when you're feeling tired. And so, physical tiredness and feelings of discomfort as well, often associated with particular health conditions or just use of the body over time, that can prompt these more unwholesome states of mind. So you may notice the tiredness and then notice you're feeling unhappy. And that may be caused by many, many different factors in your life. The stresses of work, driving a car, going to work. If you drive a car, being in traffic, that can make you unhappy. I have to go to work again, drive my car again, get on the train again, go into the workplace, or if you're online, you're working at home online, you have to boot up the computer, have to have those meetings, get that work done. You've got targets, you've got pressure from your manager, your boss. It's not surprising you have a few feelings of unhappiness in the midst of all that. So you have to be very patient and try and see them as impermanent, as not self, and have enough awareness not to let them condition your mind. So it's just a feeling. So it could be a mental feeling of unhappiness or a physical feeling of tiredness or pain. But these are all what we call conditions, objects that arise, cease, and you're aiming to be more and more mindful so that you don't let them create unwholesome mental states and detachments around them. You don't let them create craving. And this is one reason we practice, isn't it? Living in the world, you get unpleasant experiences. It's part of life. People don't always treat us well. Our body doesn't always feel good. There are obstacles as we go about our business. We have to get things done, and there's obstacles. There's bills to pay. There's things we have to do. We have to communicate to people. We get tired doing that. There's so many things that can prompt unhappy feelings mentally, or physical tiredness and physical discomfort. And this is where we are practicing and reflecting. This is, the monks say, well, this is samsara. This is the way it is in samsara. It's not all pleasant. Part of our suffering is that we have this expectation that life should be better than it is. So we're always saying, I shouldn't have to put up with this. Why is my life like this? I don't want this pain. I don't want this unhappiness. That's craving at work, and that's making things worse. It's adding on more suffering to the experience. When you're mindful, you may still have to go through painful feelings and unpleasant experiences, but you're just knowing them without grasping at them, reacting to them, attaching to them. So, you have to accept living in the world. It's not all going to be comfortable, pleasant. There is pleasure and comfort and good experiences, but it's not always like that. So don't get caught up into kind of unrealistic expectations that life shouldn't be like this. It's a mentality nowadays, the consumer mentality. You buy a product and you get it out of the new box or the wrapping, and you already see there's something wrong. You get a new phone and it doesn't work properly, or you get some product and it's scratched, or there's something not right, or it's the wrong color, or it's the wrong this, the wrong that. And we get upset, don't we? But life is like that. And it's like we have that view about our whole life, ourself. My life I shouldn't have to endure any painful experiences. But that's not realistic, isn't it? Life is a mixture of pleasure and pain. So we have to get used to it. We have to become resilient, patient. That's why the Buddha said, Kanti paramang tapotitika. Patient endurance is the highest austerity. It's the best quality for dealing with these kind of experiences. A bit of wisdom helps as well. Contemplate. It's just the way things are. Another question. Lumpur, thank you for your compassion to teach and guide us in the path to end our suffering. My question is about the teaching of the Lord Buddha. As I understand, the current teaching of Lord Buddha will not last forever. Should it be true that it will only last for 5,000 years? We have now passed the halfway mark. However, my perception is that there is increasing accessibility to his teachings, with new books being written and translated and teachings being recorded and shared virtually these days. Should we caution ourselves of the risk of wrong teachings or wrong interpretations? How would we know if we're straying off the path? Well, the Buddha did talk about the fact that his teachings, the sasana, the teachings will eventually fade from the world. I'm not sure he actually said 5,000 years. I think that's from the commentaries. But the Buddha did talk about the causes and conditions for the Dhamma to disappear from the world. And, you know, the main thing is people turn away from Dhamma. They become very materialistic, very obsessed with seeking pleasure and distraction, and they're not willing to practice. They don't have respect for Buddha Dhamma Sangha, don't have respect for monks, don't want to practice, and so on. So that's one thing to be concerned about, you know, your own level of faith, your own commitment to the practice. Because whether the Buddhist teachings are going to be in the world for another 1,000 years or a few thousand years, I mean, you're only going to live maximum maybe 100 years, if that. And you maybe only have a few more years. Who knows how long we've got to practice? We can't predict how long we're going to live. So, you know, it's not that relevant whether it's going to be around for 5,000 years or 500 years. More importantly is, are you practicing in this life at this time? Or are you putting aside the practice for other more frivolous or meaningless pursuits, which is what we're often doing, isn't it? We're often making choices and saying, I'd rather watch my soap opera than meditate. I'd rather go traveling than to go on a retreat. You know? I'd rather buy my thing that I like rather than practice dana. Every day we're faced with choices, and often the Dhamma loses, doesn't it? Because the kilesas win. Greed, anger, delusion wins. Sometimes we don't care, we don't have a sense of shame in our minds, or we don't keep the precepts, and so on. There's plenty to work with right here, right now. We don't really need to think too much about the next 5,000 years. Maybe just today. How are you practicing today? Right here, right now. And of course, yeah, there's always a danger that we can come across wrong teachings. So part of our practice is reviewing, reminding ourselves of what we've heard, what we've learned from our own experience, what we've heard from teachers, what we've read, comparing what we've experienced with what we've read and learned and heard, and being ready to learn and change. When you do come across a teaching that you decide after a time, maybe you've reflected on it, this isn't working, this isn't right, this isn't correct, or be willing to learn the lessons that you need to learn. So be open-minded and try to seek out good teachers and good teachings. So we still have the suttas, and of course, like you say, they're forever being improved. The quality of translations of the suttas, you know, the words the translators use are always being updated and improved. Even in my lifetime, I've seen a great improvement in the way Dhamma is presented. which is good. I mean, that's a good thing as Buddhism spreads around the world. People are studying it, learning from it, and trying to present it more clearly as we go. So that's a good thing. But like you say, there are people who have got their own wrong interpretation of the Dhamma, and sometimes they become well known and spread around their wrong teachings. So be cautious. The Buddha said, get to know a teacher over a long period of time. Don't jump to conclusions. You know, the next teacher, the next sort of fashionable teacher, don't rush to follow them and believe them yet. Take your time to consider what they have to say. Does it make sense when you practice with it? Does it seem to be true? What kind of results do you get practicing what this teacher has taught? Is it in line with what the Buddha taught, developing sila, samadhi, panya, the Eightfold Path? Or is it some newfangled technique that only seems to make you more greedy for results or more deluded? You know, it takes time to get to know a teacher until maybe you can really understand what they've been talking about. I'm still learning what Ajahn talked about after 37 years, 40 years, because the depth of his teachings, there's still more to learn. Good teachers are like that. There's always something new to learn from what they said, you know, even after they've died. Just as we learn from the suttas from the Buddha, we learn from Ajahn Chah. He died over 30 years ago, and we can still learn from his words. So I'd recommend keeping an open mind. Don't rush to judge people or their teachings too quickly. Give it time, but be ready to accept sometimes people get it wrong. So if you feel something is wrong with a teacher or teaching, be ready to discard it. In Thailand, they have this phenomenon, they call them shooting stars. Teachers that come up out of nowhere, the latest craze, the latest fashion. And they attract attention by saying things that are very kind of controversial or new ways of presenting the Dhamma. So there was a while ago, there's one teacher who said, he claimed he was enlightened, and he said, we don't need Buddha statues, and you don't need to make merit, and we don't need ceremonies and chanting and all that paraphernalia. We just want you to practice mindfulness and do nothing else. And he kind of was stripping away all the externals and paraphernalia of Buddhism. And a lot of people went to that teacher and thought he was the latest thing. And then some of the monks thought, what he's saying, we better just watch this. Maybe it's right, maybe not. Now he's disrobed and got married. He's given up practicing. So sometimes, you know, the latest teacher is not the best. Sometimes they are, sometimes not. So take your time before you make judgments. Dear Ajahn, when doing loving kindness meditation, I find that the intensity of my feelings and my connection to the thoughts and phrases that I repeat dims quite a lot after around 15 or 20 minutes. I experience a kind of boredom where the phrases seem to lose their meaning. When this happens, I reflect on the changing nature of phenomena and try to really focus back on what I'm trying to create in my heart. Do you have any advice on what I may be doing wrong, or how can I improve my practice? Maybe that's all you need to do. 15 minutes of metta maybe is all you need. You do a 1 hour meditation, perhaps you just do 15 minutes of radiating loving kindness, whether it's a thought, a feeling, whatever way you find works for you. Radiate it around your body, send it out in all directions, maybe focusing on individuals one at a time or groups of people. Maybe 15 minutes is enough. Like you say, you know, your mind changes, and after 15 minutes of metta, then maybe you take up another meditation. Could be the breath, or like you say, just contemplating changing nature of phenomena. Just start practicing vipassana. Meditation is a very good introduction to meditation. Metta meditation is a very good introduction, where you just focus your mind on a very good, wholesome thought just for a period of time. And you can do it in different ways. You know, sometimes just reciting the same formula, the same phrase over and over again can get boring and your mind loses interest. So you have to maybe be creative, find a new phrase that suits you, or a new aspiration in metta that suits you. Or some people develop metta in the form of a light or a certain feeling that they spread around their body, bathing their body in this beautiful, loving feeling. There's different ways you can approach it to counter the tendency towards boredom. If you're just saying, you know, may I be well, may I be happy, after a while it gets boring and we don't believe it. When we get bored, we're not believing it anymore, so it has no power in the mind. So the metta fades. You have to experiment to see what holds your mind. If you are practicing with the metta object, what works for you? What do you find holds your attention? How can you keep the effort going to maintain your mindfulness with that object? So some people use the feeling, often in the heart region. You just really develop that feeling and immerse your mind into that feeling. Other people are, as I said, using a light as a symbol for metta. But if you can only do it for a short while, fine. Just do it for a short while and then change your meditation object. Another question. Dear Ajahn, asking if it's possible for Ajahn to share your experience about going to stillness and calmness this afternoon around 2:40. Not sure what that was referring to. Maybe I said something in a talk at 2:40. I don't think this is today. This must have been yesterday. 2:40 Australia time yesterday, I was doing walking meditation. So I'm not sure what was going on there. Maybe this is Singapore or Malaysia time or some other country's time. Perhaps you're referring to some phrase or Dhamma point I was talking about at some point. I'm not sure. But anyway, share your experience about going to stillness and calmness. Well, it's something I aim to do every day, really. Every time I sit down to meditate, focus the mind on the breath, or sometimes the body, parts of the body, sometimes metta. You know, there's a number of different objects we can use, and I do use different objects from time to time, but mainly the breath. And it's about, you know, letting go of the hindrances, overcoming hindrances, sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, drowsiness, restlessness, agitation, and doubt. So it just depends which hindrance is coming up at that time. You have to work with it. And so quite often, because I've been meditating for many years, I simply go to the breath and make that very strong and prominent in my consciousness, so then the hindrances fade away. But occasionally there's a hindrance that's come up stronger than usual, and you have to use a certain strategy with it. So metta for goodwill, forgiveness, compassion. Sensual desire, often use asupa or reflection on impermanence. Sloth and torpor, brighten the mind, focus on a light. Restlessness, agitation, I usually use the breath, or contemplate death is a good one for that. Skeptical doubt, just go to the Dhamma, recite some Dhamma, or reflect on some Dhamma that I've heard to get through that. You know, if you practice regularly, then you get your skills in how to deal with the hindrances. Sometimes you just have to be very patient with them. Sometimes you just use pure mindfulness, and whatever hindrances it is, you use the mindfulness on the object And don't let that hindrance come into the mind, or get a foothold in your mind. So sometimes we talk about the 5 hindrances are a bit like 5 swordsmen, soldiers or something, and you're 1 against 5. So you have to be really firm, really sharp, really quick. Don't let them take over your mind. And it can be tiring as well, because you get rid of one hindrance and another one pops up. Just like in some movie where you're fighting 5 different baddies. Get rid of one and then another one comes back. And it can be endless. It is endless because craving is endless as long as you give in to it. But if you persist with your practice of mindfulness, you'll experience states of calm, and then it gets easier. At that moment when your mind becomes more calm, still, stable, there's this sense of ease. It's enjoyable, and you're happy to let go of hindrances because you're getting some peace and contentment that's better than whatever the hindrances have to offer. So even, sleepiness and tiredness, which can be quite attractive sometimes, that's why we fall asleep. It fades when you have the brightness and the energy of samadhi. Anger will fade because you feel at ease. You're interested in the breath or your meditation object, so you're no longer irritated or bored or averse to your experience at that time. As your mindfulness improves, the whole practice becomes more sustainable, easier. It's much easier to let go of things because you're enjoying and finding interest in your meditation object. So then you're willing to let go. If your mind gets really still, well, you don't even want to come out of that. You'd rather just sit there as long as possible. And, they ring the bell and you don't really want to hear that bell. You'd rather just carry on sitting. So if you get to that point, we wouldn't complain if you were just sitting deep in samadhi, deep in rapture, happiness, when the bell goes. I have had that experience myself before. When many years ago, I used to sit for long periods of time. So sometimes I would sit and I'd be so deep in samadhi, I wouldn't get up from my sitting in the middle of the chanting. So it was a little bit awkward. Everyone's looking at me, hey, why is he sitting meditation when the chanting's going on? I didn't do it very often, but it did happen once or twice. Or another one, monks experience, sometimes you sitting and you're in a very deep state of calm and it's time for the meal or your evening drink, and you have a choice to make. You say, do I eat or do I carry on developing my samadhi? Do I carry on in this state of calm or go and have my drink, my evening drink? Because you only get that, you get 1 meal a day and a drink in the evening once a day. So sometimes you make a choice, a sacrifice. You say, don't need to eat today or don't need to have my drink today, and you just meditate. I had a problem in Thailand. I used to find that I used to get the deepest states of samadhi sometimes at around 5 p.m. in the day, because if you've digested your food from the morning, your body feels light. And I found I could get into quite deep states of samadhi around 5 p.m. When I first went to Thailand, the daily drink time was usually at 2 p.m. before we did our chores. But then later they changed it to 5 p.m. So I had to start giving up my drink because I was more interested in doing my meditation at that time. So I just had to go without my drink. As far as food goes, when I used to stay at Wat Ajahn, I occasionally gave up a meal because I was meditating and quite happy in my samadhi, so I wouldn't go out for my meal that day. Why is that? Because sometimes when you're peaceful, you get a lot of piti, which they call food for the heart, food for the mind. And it's satisfying enough that you can go without food for the day because you've got this spiritual food, the rapture. It's good enough, that sustains you. And actually, when you have a lot of piti and sukha from samadhi, you don't really want to eat. You don't feel like eating. You don't feel hungry. You'd rather focus on your meditation at that time. So it's not something you're doing through special resolution or forcing yourself to fast or something. It's more just quite natural. The mind just doesn't want to eat for a period of time. One last question. 3 bows and gratitude to Lumpur. I rejoice in this retreat at this time. I am able to see that during sitting, thoughts are like a stream of consciousness arising due to past perceptions, views, opinions, and expectations. These thoughts cease when mindfulness arises. After a while, the mindfulness also ceases when thoughts arise again. However, mindfulness arises when the mind meets with sense impressions. So the mind is in continuous flux of arising and passing away, including mindfulness itself as well. During walking, I can see mental intentions arising before the physical movements, and the intentions also pass away when the physical movement arises. Then the physical movement ceases, causing the intention for the next physical movement to arise. So also in a continuous flux of mental intentions and physical movements arising and passing away. I would appreciate your guidance. Keep doing it. Keep making your mindfulness strong and continuous. Those moments when your mindfulness ceases, that's where you've got to be concerned. And why do you lose your mindfulness? When your mind gets distracted by a train of thought, sleepiness, sometimes it's feeling, isn't it? When we're meditating, the feeling comes up and we can't sustain mindfulness on an object. At that moment, the feeling wins and it becomes very prominent, and then you start to react to the feeling. Even pleasure can do that. You know, people get pleasurable feelings in their meditation. They start thinking, what's that? Well, I like this. I want more of this. But more often it's painful feelings, you know, pain in the leg, pain in the back, and then we react to it so we can't concentrate anymore. Or tiredness, especially at the end of the day, you feel tired, it's hard to maintain mindfulness. So that's where you have to work at it. Keep working at maintaining mindfulness. Or when it's a strong mood, remembering something that makes you angry, or remembering something that brings desire and you want to fantasize, imagine about that desire. You know, all these different experiences are where you're aiming to maintain mindfulness, and then use wisdom to contemplate that experience, to let it go. If it's bothering you, you contemplate the impermanence of it. Undermine the way the mind creates attachment out of experience, whether it's attachment to feelings and the reaction to them, memories, proliferation. Contemplate impermanence. So I was teaching that this morning, you know, use Ajahn Chah's one is just, it's not sure, it's not certain. You know, however good it seems, it's not sure. It doesn't last. It's not that good. It's not as good as you think. However bad it is, it's not sure. It's not as bad as you think. You know, don't let your thoughts trick you and fool you and pull you around all over the place. Just see, they're not sure, they're not permanent. Maintain mindfulness together with the insight into impermanence, and you're keeping your mind kind of free from creating attachments. So that's the last question for now. I'm going to leave it there. And tonight is full moon night, as I mentioned, so a very beautiful full moon outside. It also means it's Patimokkha night. So in a little while, when we finish here, the monks are going to come together to hear the recitation of the Patimokkha, our 227 rules. Every 2 weeks we listen to that, and that's going to take 45 minutes and then a bit of other time with some other chants and business. So we'll finish the live stream here and the evening program here so that the monks can do their Patimokkha. And for those of you on the live stream, we'll be back tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Melbourne time for the morning puja and meditation. So we'll leave it there. Thank you for your participation. And we'll just pay respects to the triple gem. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami.
Brothers and sisters, let us now pay our respects to Long Po by bowing 3 times. First bow, second bow, third bow.